What's going on, everyone? So today's video should not be as long as the others. There's not as much to talk about in today's video, but we're going to go over the SPY, the NASDAQ, the IWM, and the crypto market. So without further ado, let's get started with the video. Here's a daily chart of the ES, and you can see that we basically bounced right off of support today. I said this week I was going to be basically leaning long the entire time, primarily because we opened outside of the lower Bollinger Band on the weekly chart, as well as the fact that we were so close to support. So now that we're trading back within range, right? Now that we had such a big bounce over the weekend or Monday, and today, it was very difficult if you didn't capture the early morning pump, because most of the upside move happened basically within the first hour and a half of the market open. So the rest of the time it was just chops with big moves that lasted maybe like 5 to 10 minutes sometimes. So now what is basically going to happen? So a lot of people's intuition is that because we moved up so much without a proper pullback, that a pullback is warranted, because everyone was expecting, all right, like we're up so much intraday, there should be a pullback. We should at least come back and retest the opening price. We should at least go back and retest the gap to the downside, because we've been so we get used to filling gaps to the upside and the downside, etc. So then when it doesn't happen, we're not as used to it. So it makes sense why people are bearish, right? And it makes sense why people want to have a pullback. I personally want to have a pullback so that we can buy into calls cheaper, because I don't want to see this whole move happening early on in the week. I would much rather tomorrow morning, when Powell is going to be speaking at the Senate, I want the market to essentially come back. I want it to come back and retest like 372, or better yet, if it falls back down below 370, then that is going to be an amazing buy opportunity, in my opinion. And a person, I can only hope. If the ES goes red on the week, I am going to load pretty heavily into calls, most likely. And that would be pretty amazing if we could do that. So, but moving forward, right, the odds of us falling back down that heavily is very low. What can basically happen moving forward? So in my opinion, a retest of 379 should definitely, it's a very high possibility. A retest of 379 on the ES, 379 to 380, right? Above that is going to be very, very important. It's going to be the main level of resistance. So from extreme overextensions to the downside, basically a retest back to, if you look at the daily chart, a retest back to basically like the first intermediate levels of resistance here is pretty warranted, and it makes sense. So that is what I think is going to end up happening on the ES sometime during this week. Now, exactly what happens tomorrow, I'm not exactly sure, right? We could come back and retest these levels of support down here, or we can just continue moving upwards. But the main key resistance to the upside now is 379 to 380. If we can break above that, then 383 is going to be tested. And then if we can break above these highs, then we're going to come, and let's take a look at the SPY. So if we break above 383.9, then there's that gap all the way from 383.9 to 389.75. So there's that nice juicy gap if we can go and fill that. But those are pretty extreme targets to the upside. But again, it is possible for us. So initially, before this week started, I was saying that I was expecting some sort of like a 3 to 4% move on the weekly for the week. And we're unfortunately at 2.5% already. So there isn't as much room to the upside for like an easy play to the upside, because the only time I go long in a bear market is when we are extremely algorithmically overextended to the downside. So this is one of these cases when the ES especially with the Bollinger Bands, like when you use them in conjunction with the MACD, the RSI, all these indicators, they give you a better understanding of market dynamics, as well as like, you know, how the trade and how the market feels when you're trading it. That takes time and just reps and hours. But all of this stuff that I'm sharing with you guys, you can basically apply this for the rest of your trading careers. And it's been working really, really well. So I shared this in my Discord, but I don't think that I made a video on this. So essentially, when the ES opens outside of the lower Bollinger Band, right, all the way back to 1997, the ES has closed green every single week that we've opened outside of the lower Bollinger Band. So if you go back all the way to the start of the ES futures, which is 1997, every single week that we've opened outside of the lower Bollinger Band. So for example, this week we opened at 3684. You can see the open price right here, and the lower Bollinger Band price right here. You can see that we opened at 3684, and the Bollinger Band is at 3709. So we are basically 2 points below the Bollinger Band at the open. When that happens statistically, we have 100% of the time had a green week. So the best, highest quality, safe trade that we can make is if we go red for the week. Because if we go red, then there's basically 100% chance that we will close green. So yeah, one can hope. So yeah, essentially that's that for the stock market. I mean, really, we saw how like strong we saw Tesla, Apple, and intraday. We saw the tech sector leading intraday as well, you know. So the entire market was very, very strong. So essentially, I'm looking primarily at the SPY. You can feel like they were really, really keeping the price stable. There were times when you were trading intraday and, you know, it looked like it was about to rip. So it started to rip just a little bit, and then they would pull it back. I remember there was a period for about like 30 minutes specifically intraday where every green candle that we had, it was literally, this is how the price action felt. Where is this? The price action felt like this. So there was a period where we would go up a green candle, and then the next candle would go down a little bit, and then it would go up, and then go down a little bit and go up. Obviously not as dramatic as this rise, but it was something more like this, where we we went up a little, went back down, but overall the trajectory was up, but they were keeping the volatility from getting too crazy. And yeah, it was really, really interesting price action today. So 379 should be a pretty reasonable upside target for the week on the SPY. It would be a blessing if we ended up closing going red intra-week. That would really, really be a very high quality trade to go long at that point, because once again, we've never had a red week on the ES futures when we've opened on the weekly chart outside of the Bollinger Band to the downside. So yeah, man, that's really that. I mean, unless we cross back above 379 to 380, then those are the main levels of resistance. The main levels of support are basically going to be 370 to 372. And aside from that, I mean, we can take a look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin is also extremely overextended to the downside on the weekly. So it should have a bounce either this week or next week as well, which is essentially why I wanted to scale into BTO calls. But I mean, essentially I'm getting greedy because I scaled into SPY call swings, but I wanted Bitcoin to basically like fall back down to 20, and I wanted the SPY to fall back down to the levels that we opened at, so that I can scale into BTO calls as well. But currently I'm just holding on to SPY, and I would rather like I would really want I really want everyone's puts to work so that I could scale in heavier as we fall lower, because I have a very light position, and I would hate to see it go up from I would hate to see it go up on this like very light position. But essentially, yeah, that's that. I mean, there's my analysis for the overall market and the crypto market. And I hope you guys have an amazing day. Thank you.